Over 25 years ago, in the good old days of the Apple II and the Commodore 64, there existed a post-apocalyptic RPG called Wasteland. It was created by a fledgling developer by the name of Brian Fargo and his fledgling team at Interplay. Since then, the game has led to spiritual successors like the first two Fallout games, and it's inspired decades worth of RPG goodness. And now, a quarter of a century later, we've now finally seen a straight sequel, Wasteland 2, become a Kickstarter success story that's putting Brian Fargo back on the map. So is Wasteland 2 a strong return to form for the legendary developer? Short answer, yes. Long answer, oh hell yes. As you may have surmised from the title and the gameplay that you're watching, Wasteland 2 indeed takes place in the post-apocalypse America. You and your party members are members of a group known as the Desert Rangers, men and women who brave the wastes to find supplies and help others in need. One of your own, named Ace, has been killed, and it's up to you and your party to find out why, and to try and finish what Ace started. While there are indeed a lot of elements from the original Wasteland incorporated here, it actually feels much more like the first two Fallout games. Of course, Wasteland and Fallout share a lot in common gameplay-wise, considering that Fallout started as Wasteland's spiritual successor. But when you're exploring, and especially during combat, you can sense a lot of the Fallout DNA here. And that's not bad. Fallout had a really deep combat system and a highly enjoyable world to explore, and while Wasteland doesn't really have the incredible lore that the Fallout saga has, it's still a world that really feels alive, ironically. It captures that spark that old CRPGs from the 90s had. Plus, it's really nice to see a game with actual role-playing. It just wouldn't be an old-school CRPG without some character creation and self-created backstories. I had this goofy sense of wonder as I created my admittedly really stupid characters. And then I felt this sense of betrayal when they were all killed off moments later. Yeah, Wasteland 2 is pretty much as brutal as its predecessor. If you don't manage your resources very carefully, you are going to find yourself in some very sticky situations. Being trapped within a pack of mutated plant monsters with nothing but your bare hands is just not very fun. But, you know, that's the post-apocalypse for you. CRPGs back then didn't mess around or hold your hand, and that adds a lot to the game's old-school charm. Thankfully, it's at least a lot more intuitive than the original Wasteland. Having Fallout's combat system lends it a lot of accessibility while still being ridiculously deep. And, unlike the original Wasteland, which stuffed its story into a physical pamphlet that came with the game, Wasteland 2 has a story that's actually somewhat easy to comprehend. They've even got voice acting in some bits. Isn't that great? The only flaw that I can really think of is that it's not quite as good as Fallout, which offered very impressive lore. And while Wasteland 2 does have a lot of kooky humor interspersed with its brutality, I just loved the way Fallout sneaked in a lot of its humor in really sly ways. But if those are my only two complaints, then I guess Wasteland 2 ain't half bad. In fact, it's a fantastic experience in the RPG space, and like Shadowrun Returns, I hope it acts as a revelation, and reintroduces the gaming world to a time when you didn't need a gigantic budget to tell an interesting story, or to have an engrossing fantasy. It doesn't do a whole lot new, but sometimes we just need a little less new and a little more old school in our games. If you love RPGs, go check it out.